I'm A.K. Padmanabhan. I'm the National President of Center of Indian Trade Unions, CITU. And we are now sitting in the central headquarters of CITU. This building is named after the founder president of our organization, B.T. Rinadive, a veteran of the working class struggles of this country. And CITU is an organization which has got a membership of more than 6 million, representing almost all sections of workers in the country. Organized sector, or the sectors which you call as informal sectors, except government employees. There are organizations of government employees who are friendly to us, fraternal to us, but they are not directly affiliated to our organization. But both public sector factories, private sector, manufacturing sector, service sector, informal sector, and we have all sections of workers who are members of our organization.
I understand there was a very large general strike, possibly the largest general strike in history organised by your organisation a week or so ago. What was that about, and what was the character of the strike, and how successful was it?
Yes. 2nd September, the general strike was the biggest ever mobilization of workers in a countrywide 24 hours strike. And this strike call was given by all the central trade unions. Here in India, we have 12 central trade unions recognized by the government as a central trade union through verification of membership. How many states, what is your membership, a criterion is decided. On that basis, the central trade unions are recognized as central trade unions. It is not like Britain or USA or other European countries. And so we have 12 organizations which are recognized as central trade unions, to which various individual unions are affiliated. And so 11 of the 12 central trade unions are on a joint platform from 2009 onwards. And the call for this strike on 2nd September was given by these 11 central trade unions, along with independent federations of government employees, telecom employees, defense employees, bank, insurance, which are independent and not affiliated to any of the central trade unions. And so almost everybody who are organized in the trade unions had come together from 2009 onwards on a 10-point charter of demands. And that 10-point charter includes some policy matters of the government, some immediate demands of the workers. For example, the first demand we say, I'm not going into all aspects of the demands. The first demand says, control the inflation. The prices are going up. Go for universal public distribution scheme. It's a policy issue. It is not that easy to make the government accept our demand. We know that. Then we say, create more employment opportunities. That's a general demand. But one major demand is that of a minimum wage, with a scientific basis. We have a consensus reached in 1957, but not implemented till today. The Indian Labour Conference is the highest tripartite body, which was started by the Britishers. Even before independence, we had Indian Labour Conference. That is why the 15th Indian Labour Conference is in 1957, after 10 years of Indian independence. But till today, that is not accepted by the government. So that is one of the demands. Then our basic right to organize. The Indian Trade Union Act is dated 1926. 21 years before independence. But even now we are facing difficulties in getting a trade union registered. Multinational companies are victimizing workers, not allowing them to have a trade union. And so all these become our charter. And then we have raised the issue of ILO conventions 87 and 98. The right to organize and the right to collective bargaining. Government of India was a founder member of ILO and a permanent member of the governing body of ILO. Even as a colony, even as a British colony, India was part of ILO. But we have not ratified the ILO conventions, the core conventions, notably 87 and 98. So these are all some of the demands. And we demanded proper implementation of labour laws. So from 2009 onwards, we were on struggles. Campaigns, rallies, demonstrations, quota arrest programs, march to parliament. There is a big country from different parts, millions of workers came here to demonstrate. And in 2010 we had a countrywide strike. 2012 we had a strike. 2013 we had a 48 hours countrywide strike. All these happened before the last elections to the Lok Sabha. Now it is 15-16 months after the last election. A new government has come. We again submitted our charter of demands. We saw this government, the present government, going in a hasty way, diluting all the labour laws against the interest of the workers. Not only that, we have provinces, we have states, and states which are ruled by the same party, the Indian ruling party, Bharatiya Janata Party, which we call as BJP. Their own state governments, for example in Rajasthan, the state of Rajasthan, they started amending amendments to labour laws. They were the first to do that. Then the Prime Minister's office directed all the state governments to do what Rajasthan has already done. So in this situation, the day the government entered into the second year of their 5-year term, 26th May, all the 11 central trade unions and the independent national federations, the representative of this organization met in Delhi, New Delhi here, and then we decided to go for a countrywide strike on 2nd September. And our 10-point charter was extended to a 12-point charter, adding 2 demands. One is stop the dilution of labour laws. They call it reforms. Reform in India has become a bad word. Reforms never can be a bad word. But our experience, in the name of reforms, everything is going against the workers. And so stop the so-called reforms, stop dilution of the labour laws was our 11th demand. And the 12th demand was the government has decided to go for foreign direct investment in the defence sector, insurance sector and the railways. In the railway, your own experience is there in Britain. And 2nd September, we saw almost every section. Other than railways, we had called. Railways in India is a big country. The railway unions say we cannot have one-day strike. It's difficult. It's not short distance. Some trains are running for 3 days continuously.
Right.
And so they say we can't have a one-day strike. If we want to strike, we have to go on an indefinite strike. And so other than railways, and that way airlines was also not affected. Other than that, including ports, road transport, all manufacturing sector, various service sectors, government employees, telecom employees, banks, insurance, informal workers, millions and millions of them, all participated in this strike. And our assessment of it says that this is the biggest ever strike. See, our resolution on 26 May, when we decided to go for the strike, the very first sentence says, the present government has become an anti-worker, anti-people government.
So how do you go about organising? Give us an idea about how such a massive strike would be organised from a grassroots level to a large level.
See, one is, it is a continuation. The other is, once we took a decision, immediately afterwards, our affiliated unions at the grassroots level, local level unions, they start their campaign. For that, we organized state level conventions. Then there were local area level conventions. Then we had sectoral conventions, telecom workers, transport workers, national level, state level. And so it was for 4 months. It was a continuous process. We have been touring all over the country. And our organizational structure for almost all the trade unions are, we have a central office like this, headquarters. Then we have every state, we have our organization. And then we have just like your counties where you have the districts, the revenue districts, the collectors administration, the British legacy, it is still there. And that way, from to lower level, grassroots level, this is just like chain. So once this decision is taken, and millions and millions of handbills, booklets, explaining the demands of the workers. See, the labor law changes. What does it mean? We published booklets. We independently did it. All other organizations did it. That way, and naturally, we don't have a radio channel or radio or a television channel which will support us. We have, yes, some of the left political parties are running newspapers, mainly in the regional language. Not mainly, it is in the regional language. Not even in Hindi, locally, weeklies are there. These daily papers, they give some support to us, give some coverage to us. Otherwise, it is not the media. But this time, the social media was used to an extent. Almost, we are a slow starters in that. We are beginning to use that. And some improvement has been done in utilizing the social media in putting up these issues. So, it's a continuous, systematic work of trade union cadres. And our slogan, as far as my organization is concerned, reach the unreached. This was my slogan, our slogan. Reach the unreached for us meant two things, part A, part B. Part A is reach out to all your members. There should be a serious effort to reach out to every member of your organization, the grassroots level unions. One. The part B of it is reach out to every worker. He may not be your member. And this unified platform and the united campaign by all the trade unions, it helped us to create a spirit among the workers. Yes, we are all united, we are moving. That also helped us.
In the West, they've been arguing in a lot of newspapers, journals, magazines, and so on, that India in the year 2000 onwards has been a gigantic success story for capitalism and development. What's your answer?
Yes.
How does that
See,
match with those arguments?
Success story to the capitalism maybe, yes. What does capitalism mean? Does it take care of the millions of the ordinary workers and downtrodden? I can tell you this time the success of the strike, one major factor was our peasantry, agricultural workers, petty landowners. They were on struggle against the government. There is utter failure in the rural economy. thousands of peasants are committing suicides in India. There is a catastrophe. Success of capitalism, yes, we have some capitalists. The one so-called 1% of it has benefited. The vast majority of the Indian people, those who are workers, formal sector, informal sector, 93% of our workforce is in the so-called informal sector, without any benefits, without even a minimum sustainable wage. And our peasants, agricultural workers, producers of the food for the whole country, they are committing suicide.
Do you believe that, like, the Marxist idea of the conflict between capital and labour being endemic to the system?
See, for a worker, I was myself a worker. That way, a dismissed worker for my trade union activities, I was thrown out of job. I believe in the Marxist principles. There are a lot of people who say that the class struggle is updated, finished. But every day, that is what is happening. Every day. As long as capitalism remains and class struggle remains. As long as wage labor remains, class struggle remains. Nobody can wish it away. That is my firm belief.
So how did you come to believe in these ideas? What happened in your life? Did you come from a communist background, a socialist background? What's your personal...
See, that way is a very difficult thing to... But I was a worker.
What type of work?
I entered a factory at the age of 16 as an apprentice in a company which was related to Britain also.
Okay.
Ashok Leyland. British Leyland.
All right, okay.
They had a collaborator in Chennai. I am from Chennai. I entered that factory at the age of 16 as an apprentice, a trainee. My own experience. That brought me closer to the trade union movement, closer to the communist movement. Then onwards, I was thrown out of my employment only because of my trade union activities. And from that onwards, I am a full-time activist of the trade union.
How does the trade union engage in, or does the trade union, has it engaged in political education of the activists?
Sure. As far as my organization is concerned, from day one, from the foundation, our call was unity and struggle. Unify the working class for struggles and struggle for further strengthening the unity. This is the call that we gave in 1970. And for that, we continuously educate our cadres. We run our journals, magazines. Thousands of copies of journals are printed in different languages. We hold trade union classes. We discuss, we insist that democratic functioning should be there in the trade unions. The discussions in the working committee of the trade unions itself will be an educative process. Especially in the last 2.5 decades. The media, everywhere, the print media, the electronic media, the broadcasters, everybody is pumping in from international level to local level anti-working class ideas, anti-struggle ideas, the end of history theories. Against that we have to struggle. And these struggles, including the 2nd September. 2nd September has not come like that. It is a development from different things. We had a lot of sectoral struggles. Our mine workers struck work for 2 days, countrywide strike. Our transport workers struck work for a day, road transport separately, on 30th April. November coal mines. Then in January, telecom workers, 2 days against privatization. Insurance workers, bank workers. India has got a tradition of more than 100 years of trade union movement.
Yeah.
Yes, the revisionist, reformist understanding is there very strong within the trade union movement also. While we are uniting our forces, we are struggling against those wrong, what I consider as wrong tendencies also.
And after independence, Nehru talked about socialism and social democracy and so on. What, in your opinion, was wrong with what?
See, he never talked about socialism. He was talking about socialist pattern of society.
Socialist pattern.
Pattern.
Okay.
Socialism and socialist pattern is basically different. He talked about. Then his followers started talking about democratic socialism.
Right.
And socialism had such an impact in this country that almost many political parties use the word socialism for some time. Nowadays nobody speaks of it. Even some regional parties talked about, and one party went to the extent of talking about scientific socialism without even understanding what does it mean. You know, as a foreigner you may be just taken aback when I say that when this present ruling party was formed, for some time they talked about Gandhian socialism. After the fall of Soviet Union, after 1991, there is a setback to the socialism, and supporters of socialism also, yes, there is a negative impact. But for me and to my organization, we tell them, yes, this is a phase. We have to overcome this. We consider this not as a failure of socialism. We consider this as a failure of how socialism was implemented in certain countries. And that way, the struggle for socialism has to continue. India is not a country where the capitalism is fully developed. We have even pre-feudal remnants in this society. Pre-feudal, not even feudal. You know, even in this 21st century, untouchability is practiced in almost every village and even in urban centers. In which clan you are born, or which caste by birth, which you cannot decide, which I cannot decide. But just by birth I am branded that you are an untouchable. That remains even today.
And how do trade unions fight against this question of the differentiation between caste and class? How can trade unions fight?
Trade unions it's a difficult situation because there is a big hold of all these among the workers also. And organizations like us, we take this opportunity to struggle against them, educate them. Yes, here caste and class are intertwined. And we have to completely work out slogans, yes, from among the workers also. Certain workers with this caste background, the oppressed sections, have to be supported specifically on their type of demands. See, even if you are born in an oppressed section, even if you are employed in a higher position, you are ill-treated. That is Indian society.
What about the position of women within this labour movement struggles?
Yes, for us, we were the first trade union after formation in 1970. In 1978, we formed a subcommittee for women workers, All India Coordination Committee of Women Workers. Now almost every trade union at least have some subcommittee or coordination committee of women workers. We have 35% of our membership women workers. And women in this Indian society has very serious problems. And like that, the women workers also have specific problems at their workplace for their equal wage, equal status, like that. But we have to educate our men that women's problem are not women's problem are the society's problem or the problems of the trade unions. That is the way we look at it.
I was at a meeting a couple of days ago and there were some people saying India doesn't exist. India is breaking apart. Effectively they were saying this type of idea. But you're describing to me some sort of capacity to bring people together through the union.
Sure, this unity has to be maintained. The unity of the working class, unity of the people have to be maintained. And it is that unity that should be utilized to change the Indian society for the betterment of the millions and millions of working people.
No, it sounds to me that if you like, the working class is the main force that can unify the country.
Surely. Working class has to unify the country. In my opinion, working class has to lead the struggle for change in the society. That's what I believe and it's what I work for.
Okay. So if I said to you the phrase from Marx, workers of the world unite, would you think this is the primary, if you like, thinking that people
to
should
make
adopt?
the workers of the world unite, we have to see that it is locally united, it is regionally united, it is nationally united, and move towards that.
What message would you give to the workers of Europe or the people in Britain who are, for example, joining with the Labour Party and beginning to come towards socialist ideas? What message would you give about how they should organise and what they should do in their society?
I'm not here to tell the British workers or the European workers because they have always been in the forefront of the struggles in those days. And the struggle of the British workers were an inspiration to us. But unfortunately, during the last few years, in the name of New Labour and at the time of Thatcher or after that, the Blairs, Tony Blair and all others, whatever they talked, we are all worried about it. And good sprinklings coming in different parts and the news that we hear, I hope there will be some hope in the coming days because everywhere in the world, on one side you are attacking the workers, on the other side the workers are coming into the streets. And that will strengthen in the coming days, those movements and those waves will turn into a powerful gale or a volcano that can change this society. If that happens, at least in the next generation, I will be happy.